Hey everyone, welcome to the show. In this video, we'll be going over a few of the problems that I have with this 10-inch Lagostina cast iron pan, which is a Model E cast iron pan. I've had it for a few years. There's a few problems that I'd like to go over, and I'd like to show you how I'm going to fix them. Now these are not cheap pans, and that's why I want to fix this one up rather than just buying a new one, for example. So the first problem with this pan is that it rocks. It's really annoying on the glass cooktop that I have, so I'd like to correct that. Now let me show you what's going on here on the bottom of the pan. This pan is designed, what it looks like it's designed to make contact around the perimeter. And I'm not sure if you can see this here. Let me get you down a little bit lower so you can see it. There's a big void under there, and it tapers inward. It kind of bellies up, and you'll see that same on the inside. So here I have some 220 grit sandpaper, something fairly rough. And we'll just run this back and forth a little bit, get a sense of where the high spots are. So you'll be able to see the high spots are both here and here, which is around where I expected. So here I have a wooden sanding block with 180 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to go ahead and sand these two areas down a little bit. That's good. So now we'll just run it over some sandpaper. And just a quick final test here to see how it performs. Does it rock or not? That feels good, nice and solid. I'm taking a few moments here just to level the surface plate. That way I can show you exactly what's happening inside this cast iron pan. This scale reads in 10,000ths of an inch, so that means that we're off by between 50,000ths and 35,000ths of an inch from the center point to the outside. When I first started using this pan, I found that eggs were kind of going towards the outside, but I didn't pay too much attention to it, as you can see in the video here. Now when I started to cook with bacon though, everything changed, because with the bacon, the fats were pooling towards the outside immediately. And anything towards the inside, any bacon there, was burning well before anything around the outside was cooked. So that just didn't work for me, and I immediately stopped using this pan. So let me show you the setup here to fix this problem. It's mostly wood. I tried to make this out of parts that I had in my shop. I really didn't want to go out. So this is just what I had hanging around. So let me show you what's going on here. Here's a shaft from an old Ford Ranger shock absorber. I've just made some little retaining sleeves here as well. This is a pretty low budget setup. It's not meant for high speed running, and I don't think I need to use it for that. I just want to make sure that I can spin the cast iron pan while I run an angle grinder. So I'm going to set this to low speed. I'm going to set it up with a torque setting on it. So that when it spins, and if it hits me or whatever it happens to hit, that it will stop. The setup is surprisingly rigid for what you see here in pieces of wood put together, some bearings. What I have though, unfortunately, is a warped front faceplate, and that's going to cause some problems. So I've set up a makeshift lathe I'm going to skim the front surface off and get a nice flat surface going there. That'll make the next steps much easier. So I learned very quickly that I had to spin in the opposite direction because the drill chuck was loosening off automatically, and that was causing me some problems. I didn't remove everything and get it completely flat. I have 6 screws coming through here, and I didn't want to get into those screws. This is plenty of contact area for what I need. When this cast iron pan is going to be mounted to this is why I've set it up to be vertical. The handle is going to be spinning around. Now I'm going to have a torque setting on that drill, and if it hits anything, it should stop. This is why I've not set it up in a horizontal fashion. I don't want that handle spinning around horizontally. Ready to get started. First I'm going to set the torque setting. All power tool cords are going to be from behind me, so they can't get caught up in anything here. I'm going to start by stripping the seasoning, and I'm going to get a respirator on. I had to switch over to one of these abrasive discs because of the amount of material that I needed to remove. It worked fairly well. It was obviously very dirty, but it did the job. Now I'm at a point where I'm pretty happy with the result. It's relatively flat. Prior to mounting, I went ahead and I measured the thickness of this cast iron pan at the thinnest area, which was the depression towards the center, and it was a little less than 1/4 of an inch thick. So I felt comfortable with removing that 1/16 of an inch or so maximum in the center. In a previous video, a viewer had mentioned that in a highly polished cast iron pan, there is no need to season it. It will be non-stick as it is, and food will just glide around. I'm assuming that means with oil in it. So I'm going to take this opportunity, I'm going to polish this up a little bit more to a near mirror finish, and I'm going to post a link up in the top corner there for a test of a highly polished cast iron pan, this one here. If you are interested in that other video, then make sure you come back and check the rest of this one out. What we're going to be doing is finishing off this surface, prepping it properly for accepting the seasoning layers, and I'm going to do 3 seasoning layers on here. Then we'll take this one into the kitchen and test it out and see how it did. So right now I have it 2000 grit and then a polishing compound to get it to a more or less mirror finish. But I know from previous tests that that does not allow a very good bond for the seasoning layer. So what I'd like to do right now is just sand by hand to 120 grit sandpaper. Abrade that surface a little bit on the sidewalls and on the bottom, and then prep that properly for seasoning. We'll do a cleaning after that and then start our seasoning steps. I'm pretty happy with it, and in fact I really like the look of these little extra score marks here from the grinding disc. They kind of remind me of what you get in a vintage pan. I have a few pans that looks very similar. And let's get this thing seasoned. I'm again going to use the Stargazer seasoning method like I have in previous videos. That works really well for me. There's one other thing I just thought of that I'd like to try with this, and that is to etch this with vinegar. That is, basically boil it on the stove at a high temperature and it will etch very quickly. I think that's going to give a little bit better adhesion as well to the seasoning from what I've done in previous tests. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. I'll bring you back and show you the result. This is the before, and let me zoom you in, and I'll show you the after as well. So after 4 coats of seasoning, this is the result. Now there is a little bit of beating that happened here. I went a little bit too heavy on the last coat, but I'm not too worried about that because it'll all even out in the end once I start using this pan. Now of course I seasoned the bottom as well. This looks pretty good. So let's get this into the kitchen and start testing. I'm going to do both an egg test and an oil test to see that we've corrected the problems with the flow to make sure that it doesn't go to the perimeter like it was doing before. Now before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and season this with bacon, or finalize the seasoning with bacon. It is the traditional way of doing it. Now, I don't really understand why that is, so if you guys know and you'd like to share with everybody, please put it in the comment section below. I'm sure we'd all appreciate it. I was planning on doing a separate oil test in the pan, but after cooking the bacon and seeing how the bacon fats reacted, I was pretty satisfied that that problem was solved. Since I more or less eyeballed it with the angle grinder, I thought it would be a good exercise to set up the dial indicator again, just to see how much material we did remove and how flat that surface is. The dial indicator showed that I ground the middle just a little bit too low. After moving it outwards, the surface raised up and stayed fairly consistent until the very outside. I want to make a few observations because after I finished the seasoning process with bacon, I noticed that it had discolored the surface really badly. And I'd never really done that process before on any of my pans, so it was a bit unexpected. Have any of you guys experienced that problem? And how do you get around it? And why do you even need to use bacon? Why can't you just use bacon fat to get around this issue? Other than that, though, it seems to perform very well. I'm happy with it. The egg test seemed to work well. Cooking the bacon oil did not pool. The fat didn't pool towards the outside. It more or less stayed an even coat, and it provided really good, well-cooked bacon. So I can't imagine most people would want to go through this process. So it's definitely something to check for in the store. If you can bring a little straight edge with you or something like this, then put it on the pan, see how it measures up, and do that same thing on the bottom as well. Find something flat, see how even or uneven it is. Each pan could be a little bit different in the store as well. sneak peek into an upcoming video, and it will impact you subscribers as long as this project works out, and that will be 2 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you do that. Now these are pans I bought online. These were $8.88 without tax. They're the cheapest pans that I have found anywhere, and they're 10-inch pan. That's what it says anyway, 10 inches. General Store is the brand name. The funny part I saw when I took the packaging off was that there are no markings on here whatsoever. I understood that there needed to be markings for any products that are sold nowadays, so that's a bit unusual. I mean, it has markings on the packaging, so maybe that's okay. So there are 2. I don't know how good these are as far as whether they sit flat, but they're super rough. So that is going to be the future project. That's as much as I want to tell you guys at this point. So I'm really happy that I've done this. I'm looking forward to using this pan a lot more in the kitchen. It is a nice looking pan. It, I think, has a lot of good qualities to it. The size is great. I can cook a lot in here in comparison to some of the other pans. And it's got this fairly long handle here that doesn't heat up too quickly as well. But these major issues, or one major issue, was preventing me from using it. If you guys have ideas of improvements that you think I should make to this setup, then by all means put that in the comment section. I will definitely read those. Take care, guys. See you on the next one.